What is going on, guys? It's Eclipse here, and today's video on World of Tanks is a little bit of a different one. We are going to be talking about why you aren't winning games on World of Tanks console and how you can actually improve your gameplay using these couple of different tips and thinking about them in game when you're playing in order to actually maximize your win rate within your games and just basically become a better player overall. It's sort of things that you'll develop over time as you play, but obviously if you understand more about them, then you are going to be able to progress faster and you'll be able to get better and you'll be able to place in the top 3 much more consistently than you probably already do, depending on obviously how skilled you are. If you're already a fantastically skilled player that's way better than I am, then of course don't take these tips as one of the the pinnacle tips, but these are areas whereby most players in the game could probably benefit. Even myself, from time to time I come into positions where I know that I should probably not be in, but sometimes it just gets a little bit of a rush of excrement to the brain, and then you have to kind of think about it and relocate into a position that better suits you so that you don't have that game where you've been removed from full health and you've literally done no damage. Now, first things first, we'll go by number 1, being in probably one of the most important tips in the game, in that you're playing in areas where your tank doesn't favour. So, for example, if you're playing in a light tank, you don't want to be facing heavy tanks. You don't want to be side scraping off a corner. You don't want to be doing things like driving straight through the middle of the map in a heavy tank where there's a lot of open spaces and you can get shot from multiple different angles at the beginning of the game. Those are the sort of things that often people get caught out, and it's those one singular play within a battle that kind of determines whether you're going to have a good game or not. So I'm not saying that everyone does this, but sometimes it's those games where you thought you were going to win, but you made that split decision to do something where it was just not quite right, and you decided you're going to go through a position or an area in the map that is more dangerous. It's got a bit of risk to it. You knew that there was tanks in front of you that were in these different positions, and you still decided to go through the middle of the map. Yes, I've done that before myself. When you have that kind of idea that it's going to be this fantastic game, you're going to go through the middle of the map, you're going to have this ruffle stomp by, you're going to find everyone, and then suddenly within half a second all of your hit points have disappeared and you're just a wreck in the middle of the open field where you thought, that didn't quite go as planned. Yes, this is the sort of thing you need to be thinking of. So often the reason why people don't have good games in World of Tanks is because of those split-second decision-making things that they have done, whereby they've just chosen to do something that they know is probably risky, and it's taking those risks when you probably don't want to. That is kind of the problem. And so don't take your tank into a position that doesn't suit it, especially in the beginning of the game. Remember, after you've secured a decent amount of damage, you've helped your team within a flank, you can be a bit more risky, you can play the game, you can determine whether or not you should be moving forward through these positions. What is the risk of, when there's 3 tanks left on the enemy team, of going through the middle of the map going to actually end up taking you out from full health in half a second? Well, it's probably non-existent, especially at the end of the game. 3 tanks shoot you all at once, unless they're Death Stars, they're probably not going to be able to actually take you out from full health. So that's one key thing that you need to think about. Remember, don't take your tank into an area that doesn't favour it at the beginning of the game, and you'll do a lot better. Now, as far as number 2, not being situational and relocating or moving to a position that better suits your tank. So it's very similar to number 1, but this is about seeing the opportunity to move to a position that will better suit your tank. So yes, you'll have positions on the map where your tank does favour, but if in that situational game where the enemy team have rushed aggressively into that spot, and where actually, when you think about it, your tank probably doesn't suit that spot anymore. It's not a spot that you should probably be going in this specific game, so it's not necessarily, a bad spot to begin with, but if you see that the enemy team are going into a pretty aggressive spot on the map, then you probably shouldn't be 1 versus 5, 1 versus 4, because no matter how good you are of a player, then you're never going to be able to do that, especially at the beginning of the game. maybe in the late game 1 versus 4, but even then, all at the same time, it's very, very difficult to actually take that out unless they're on like kind of such low hit points that you can just pump them one by one as they come round. So that's kind of a position or a thing that we need to kind of think about when we're playing in our tanks, and when you're actually trying to have these better games, improve that win rate, and of course do more damage, do more assistance damage, and just have the longevity in the game where you can actually survive till the end and also still have a decent amount of hit points left to just carry on the fighting should you have needed to. Right, this third one, the third one is basically a little controversial, so I'm going to put it out there. Playing in awful tanks is going to make your win rate worse. So let's not beat around the bush. If you're playing in the Leo comparatively to something like a Dreadnought, of course you're going to have a worse win rate because the tank is just flat out worse. Why would you be playing in something that does like 150 alpha damage per shot, where, you know, if you're not that experienced and you don't know all of the mechanics, it's going to be very, very hard for you to deal with like the consistent amounts of damage, especially when you're coming into that tier 7 and tier 9 games. You know, when you're in a tier 7 in a tier 9 game, of course it's very hard when you've got that such little pen and such little alpha damage that you're going to do that high damage game. So often what I see players doing is they're playing these terrible tank lines as a beginner player, where they are going to struggle in the first place just because the tank is pretty bad. Even I, you know, someone that's played 20,000 battles, they played 100 plus days on World of Tanks, you know, it is very, very difficult when you're playing in something like the Leo, or to consistently have those good games. Yes, I can, you know, come top of the team fairly regularly in a pretty terrible tank, but when you consider it to something like a Conqueror, if you take the T95, yes, it's a good tank in some situations, but for the majority of the time, other tanks like the Conqueror are going to have much more flexibility, they're going to be able to move, so sometimes you need to reevaluate which lines you're going down. So if you're trying to become a better player and become someone that actually can do this sort of stuff, then yes, sometimes you do actually have to blame it on the tools, because, you know, if I'm playing in an M3 Lee, or I'm going to play in something else, then of course you're going to have a better win rate in something that is just genuinely better of a tank, and one that's more competitive in game. So make sure that you are doing that in game. You know, if you are a beginner player trying to increase that win rate, make sure you pick a tank that actually is good, and we've got loads of best tank guides on the channel that you can have a look at that will be linked at the end of this video. So if you want to have a look at that, as well as some other how to get better at World of Tanks console videos, they are at the end of this video. So if you want to go there at the end, that will be fantastic, and hopefully, you know, that will help you out with some more kind of ideas as to how you can actually get better at World of Tanks console, in terms of the mechanics, in terms of the equipment, in terms of various different tanks, how you should play them. You know, it's all helpful, hopefully to you anyway, as to how you can get better. Now, number 4. Another thing that, you know, a lot of people kind of miss out on, they say like they don't want to spend so much silver on one tank, but it is genuinely not using the right equipment or crew skills. So equipment and crew skills is one of the most vital things. It is one of the crucial things that will determine whether you deal that last shot of damage into the opponent or they deal the last shot of damage into you. So if you're 1v1, you're on a one shot, you know, you fire first, you have a worse reload. If you had that loading time buff, you would have actually finished them off before they would have finished you off, if that makes sense. So if you don't run any equipment, you're bound to do worse. So basically, make sure that in every tank that you own, you try and put equipment in if you have the silver. Remember, you do lose the silver, or half of the silver cost of whatever you spend. So say if you spent 1 million, you would then only get 500,000 back when you sell the tank. But remember, you'll be able to get through the tank faster, you'll be having better games, which means you'll earn more silver. So take that into account when you're actually thinking about it, because sometimes I see these comments, I'm not spending any silver, I'm going to lose so much silver if I spend money on equipment, but actually you'll probably actually make more money because you're performing better in your games to cover that cost of the equipment. So think about that when you are playing in your tanks. Use the right equipment. We've got various different equipment and crew skills guides on the channel that you can have a look at. So yeah, they're kind of guiding you over what sort of things are the best for the different tank classes: heavy tanks, mediums, light tanks, tank destroyers, and of course artillery. And number 5, not understanding the mechanics or some of the core game aspects, by which I mean the penetration, by which I mean the side scraping mechanic, how armor works in the game, what are the weak spots, what are the kind of spotting mechanics, how can I outspot opponents. You know, these are all stuff that you need to kind of focus on trying to learn, because for the majority of new players, they don't know what this is about. You know, for the majority of players, they still don't understand what some of the mechanics, how they exactly work in game, and that is something that everyone should realistically know. And it should be imperative for wargaming console, at least, to actually try and educate players, but they don't seem to want to do that much in terms of tutorials, guides and stuff actually in-game, and so people are having to come to YouTube, and I hope that these videos that I make somewhat help you in some sort of way that actually, you know, will help you develop as a player, and actually, you know, you have those games where you thought, you know what, I actually did a really good job there of helping my team win the game, and hopefully these help. So this is kind of a video that tried to highlight some of the key aspects of the game that you need to think about when you are playing, and sometimes it's hard to think about your own gameplay in a non kind of biased way, and that is something that I found difficult. So, you know, you'll say, oh, my team is terrible, and often people that say my team is terrible as the reason why we lost the game often don't realise that they could have impacted the game a little bit more and then made it better for their team. So yeah, it's kind of difficult. Sometimes your team is genuinely just that bad, so, you know, no matter what you do, you could be the best player in the world, you will still lose games. It doesn't matter whether you had the best game in the world. You know, I've had 10k damage games before where we've still lost the game. It doesn't really matter on an individual basis in some games where no matter what you do, you're still going to lose the game. But it's trying to maximise the amount of damage, maximise all of the situational tiny little bonuses that you can get. You know, if you survive 5% more in all of your games, that's going to mean that, or you have more health in every single one of your games, means you'll get one more shot. That one more shot could have added, you know, an extra 2% destroyed per battle, which means that in those rare occasions where you're 1 versus 1 at the end of the game, you are just doing better comparatively to what you are before. So remember, use all of these things to your benefit, think about them in game, and you should be able to increase that win rate on World of Tanks console. And I really hope that this video has kind of opened your eyes a little bit. Think about yourself, your gameplay, think about where you're going to be positioning your tank. Remember, relocating and being situational, where some games, you know, you might have gone a specific way. Often what I found myself when I was kind of developing as a player, you know, being at about 55% win rate, it was a case of I knew all of the mechanics, I knew I had my tank set up in the right equipment, but what happened is I would get into a routine where I would not move from the positions that I go to every single game on every map, not depending on what enemy team composition was like. So if there's lots of heavy tanks, if there's lots of tank destroyers. And so yeah, make sure that what you do is you relocate when you need to, move into positions that you do actually need to, and you will have those better games. So hopefully this video did help. Just a little eye opener, hopefully it did. Other than that, I hope you did enjoy. If you want to check out more guides for World of Tanks, then you can on screen right now. Other than that, like the video if you liked it. If you're not subscribed already and you like this video and you like some of the other content I have on my channel, then why not subscribe, as it will keep you up to date with everything that I produce on my channel, and hopefully that will be good for you as well. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.